Today is period 3, 1754 to 1800. But we're going to go from 1754 to 1783. And for you people who like dates and why those like the start and the end for today, and some of you guys already know, it's the start of the French and Indian War in North America, and then it's the Treaty of Paris that ends the Revolutionary War in 1783. Tomorrow, or the kind of the second part course, we'll get into the articles and Constitution and Washington's presidency. So that's why I had to do this. Why am I doing this? Why do you say, Mr. Price, it's 45 minutes? Because we want to answer the question, all right? Then you want to cite examples. Okay? And when I say answer the question, and I say that please, you may get a prompt or question that may not, you're a little bit fuzzy about. Be in the orbit of the question. You may not be exactly on target, hitting the bullseye. You know exactly what they're asking, but be around in orbit. Be around, that maybe that's related to. And how do you help yourself, even though maybe you didn't directly understand the question or the prompt, with specific examples? Your knowledge. You have, again, you're displaying what you know and what you've learned in this class and what you know about U.S. history in here. So that's how you can really help yourself out. And you're explaining, how does it go together? What you know, the cause and effect. You're comparing something to another event in U.S. history. You're contrasting, you're showing the difference. You're showing how things have changed for certain people, our government, or how we approach certain kinds of, foreign policies or whatever that may be. So you're saying the change over time. You're showing definitely what's going on with the historical context here. So exciting today, what we're talking about today. So exciting. Love early American history. Everybody loves the 20th century. Everybody, loves the later American history on here. Early American history is just so fascinating to see how we formed and grew as a nation here. I just love history. So excited about it. And I wish I could go more into more details than what I'm doing, but that's going to really lose the objective of these videos. I'm going over and annotating here, there, everywhere what you should know, what I expect you to know. That's where you always will gather up from these videos, taking notes like, let me start with what I should know. What did Mr. Price say that I should know is a given before you do the online test? I could go off into many details. This is not the full course, it's more of a review. All right, so what you should know, starting here in 1754, as the events are culminating, as we're ending up on all the duel for North America, that's like, culminating into the climax of the French and Indian War, is the join or die kind of cartoon wood carving of Benjamin Franklin. I'm going to put the picture of that up here. I just kind of think that you guys are going to have various forms of the test online. This is a very common thing to have join or die and what it was about and what's the historical context of that. Well, you got the French in the Ohio River Valley in the Northwest Territory. You got the colonists and part of the British Empire, because we're not like, the United States of America at this point. So having some conflict. You have a statesman, you have a really newspaper guy, journalist, enlightened, deist, kind of just really this leader from Pennsylvania, Quaker, who's trying to get the colonies together. And we know how tough that's going to be all the way leading up to the Civil War. And maybe some people may say even now that, like, instead of the United States, sometimes we can add like the disunited states. And that join or die was his kind of symbolic, representation, what you should do. All right. So you should know this kind of early political cartoon that will be used not only to try to unite the colonies in this kind of war, but the Revolutionary War. It's going to be used in a couple of, colonies like New York and Virginia, 1765, and it's going to be like they changed the words to unite or die. Don't worry, on the AP test, they will give you the years about how you want to analyze this. It's all about representation of this, snake that to order to live, we have to come together, as the Beatles would say. But as we know, one thing that you should know that you're on there, the Albany Plan of the Union, because some of the colonies met in Albany, did not go along with this plan. It was a failure as far as getting everybody together as colonies of the British subject. The British don't like us making our own decisions. It's like he wants the crown making decisions. Some of the southern colonies are already saying it sounds like to me this is more of a Midwest northern kind of confederation than really having the southern colonies in here. So it's pretty amazing that that one thing about the French and Indian War is going to be more kind of started or instigated by the Virginians kind of going out to the Northwest Territory, and that the Revolutionary War is mostly kind of centered around the nucleus in Boston. But that's neither here nor there. No join or die. Know that that it's going to be used twice. Albany Plan of the Union, 1754. You begin the start of the French and Indian War, and you can go to some direct causes with George Washington out there. Very young and green, but he is gaining experience. He is again, him and the Half King there, the Iroquois Nation. Really disposing of some French emissaries and actually retreating back and making an impromptu fort necessity. And he actually is, surrenders and, capitulates and starts admitting to killing in an unprovoked way these French emissaries. Not he himself, of course, but he's kind of admitting that he doesn't know French. That's kind of like somewhat direct kind of start of the French and Indian War. And you can call it the French and Indian War. You don't have to worry about 7 Years' War, which is the World War kind of, title that's given to it from 1756 to 1763. We just know it as the French and Indian War. And the French really made the formal declaration in 1756 against the British here, but already you got Braddock and Washington skirmishes there in 1755. Yeah, again, you don't see the annotations up here. I'm just going into details because I always like to talk about the Braddock incident, going out there with Washington, who's the aide-de-camp to Braddock, and they can't kill him. He gets 2 horses shut out underneath him. Indians are like, they're saying I don't, understand it. I'm leveling my gun after him, and he's already been sick for 10 days already, and Washington is kind of taking control after Braddock and many of the officers been shot dead, and he just can't kill the dude. Whether he's magic, he's a wizard. I think a mutant because he can control the weather too. As we see in Yorktown, as we see in Long Island, that after all this, he's got 4 bullet holes in his clothes, his coat, but he's not dead. And the Native Americans are like, oh, this guy's a little freaky. But anyway, so Albany Plan of the Union, we got the French and Indian War here. A lot of what we got here, like the French allies, like the Hurons, and you got more of the Iroquois nations, more kind of siding with the British for the most part. Just for your information before I get to number 2 here, I know I'm going somewhat a sidebar a little bit at this moment, so that please remember that people say, well, the Native Americans chose, they're part of this empire too. It's not just the duel for North America between 2 empires. It's really 3 empires. And a lot of the Native Americans, specifically the Iroquois, and really the Miami, the Shawnee, and the Ottawa, all these Indian groups are trying to kind of play one off the other. And a lot of you are going to say, but Mr. Price, it always seems like the Native Americans are, end up on the losing side. The problem is that you guys will not understand or will forget as I say this to you. I think I've always emphasized how they were just not well supplied. You don't have the endless supply. They're not really united. We're going to be talking about Tecumseh, and I don't know if I'll get to it this week like that. Maybe on Thursday. Uniting the Nations tribe. You have Little Turtle. They can't really. Are never really united. These are over like 500 nations here in North America. They're separate, entities in a way. They warred with each other. They fought each other. They wanted certain kind of territorial rights or kind of respect to what they're hunting and fishing and their farming lands. So they're not really, again, because we group them all together as Native Americans, they're just these separate nations. And even if you have, everybody said, well, it's the Iroquois, they're a confederation. Some of them, you've got really the Tuscarora being almost refugees into this kind of Iroquois confederation from the Yamasee War. They're not really united amongst themselves. Hence the 1830s with the Cherokees. John Ross, John Ridge, Treaty Okota. Who signs what? Who's going to sign with that? So they're always kind of split. They're never really united in kind of this commonality here. And they've been separate nations for so long. So please understand it. And they have their own agenda, their own kind of ways. Just think about us in the Soviet Union. We allied ourselves with probably one of the most murderous dictators, in the world, and even came up with agreements with them after World War II. So you got to think about whether you're Chief Pontiac, whether if you're like Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse on one side and Red Cloud on the other, that having different opinions, or you're joining with another group of Indians. If you're part of so-called the 5 civilized tribes, you have different agendas. And really the Europeans, from the French to Spanish and the English, they knew how to kind of play one off the other. And we're all enticed by trinkets, whatever that glitters. Everybody in here in a way has a price that you're thinking that you're tempted by, things or promises. Just think about, somebody gave some genie says, what do you want? A mansion and $1 million or world peace? What would you choose? And so think about the Native Americans. They see the metal pots. You say, oh, well, what's so good? It's great. The kind of the swords, the sharp knives, the axes, and maybe a promise of territory and land, a promise of other riches too as well. Europeans have the stuff, and people love stuff since the beginning of time, and that's what is really dividing the Native Americans, what they always have to go with. I know you guys don't like, again, it's one of those things like you want to get back to something to distract you, because I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty, and God forbid, I don't want you to start thinking about the Native Americans, and putting them in context of history. But I really, you have to understand that, and just as I go over like what you should know. All right, number 2. It's all right to call this the French and Indian War. Know the causes and effects. Causes are pretty simple. The American Pageant has the greatest title of thing. It is the duel for North America. We know from King William, Queen Anne, and this war of Spanish secession, Austrian secession, King George's the First's war, the War of Jenkins' Ear, that kind of coincided with that kind of war. They're dueling over this part of the Western Hemisphere. And not only just the kind of continental North America, the Caribbean as well, which is really becoming a revenue generator for the nation states of France, not Great Britain at this time, England and Spain and the Dutch as well. So you see, and they're over in Asia as well. But right now, it is this kind of dual for here, and this, from the beaver trade to the just trade in general in furs and what you're going to command. And land is the richest at this time. It's the name of the game. So those are the causes. And know the results. And you guys know from the first grade some of the results in here. And I'm going to put up there that key figures are George Washington, even though Washington does not continue on into the French and Indian War as a big commander for the British colonials at this time. That's the one that you should know. Franklin with the Albany Plan of the Union, trying to unite the colonies in here. All right, so that's the second thing. And only the third thing are the results. I've said this, you know those, you've already got some in your head here of what the results are, and you should know them. It's good that you already have it. You're like, hey, Mr. Price got them, banked them down. It's the results. Really, the French are basically out of North America. They give up Canada, they give up all the, lands that's, from, Nova Scotia, all those kinds of lands, get up really the Northwest Territories, like, let me keep New Orleans, so like that, so maybe, in the future, a football team can be kind of use us as a mascot. Anyway, so that, and they're kind of satisfied. They get to keep Guadalupe and Martinique, the Caribbean, sugar islands and stuff, but they're out of North America. That's what you should know. They're out. They are out. All right, so that's a significant point when they signed the Treaty of Paris. This, there's multiple treaties of Paris, and this is the first one here, the significant one in 1763 in American history. So they are out, all right, in here. And now here's the thing. What to do with the hillbilly colonists? What do you do with them? And I say hillbillies, that's more of a 19th, early 20th century term. Most of the British are probably, if you want to use terms, are calling them like, pikeys, gits, and kind of those kind of, using that kind of language. It's very, using that terminology. I like to, what I mean when I say the colonists as hillbillies. As they're thinking of them as inferior, even though the colonists are enriching themselves. They're British subjects. A lot of them are immigrants from Great Britain, recent and very cultured. But again, people like to put themselves up, and the British like to put themselves up by saying that they are superior to the hillbillies. And what to do with them now? First thing, as you know, with all the skirmishes with the Paxton Boys, with Pontiac's Rebellion, keep them restricted. And that's going to be the big thing with the Proclamation Line of 1763. Keep the hillbillies restricted because it's hard enough. They kind of, the Native Americans kind of like turned on us with Pontiac's Rebellion because I think they were expecting a lot more from us, like the French, but we don't act that way. So that's one of the main results right here that I think you already know with the Proclamation Line of 1763. Now start holding them responsible, because they are British subjects, for money that we can recuperate from this investment and this cost of the war in North America and around the world. They're part of the British subjects. It starts for them to paying up. So it's no longer the kind of revenue from, they're already being taxed locally and with the colonial assemblies. So it's not like there's no taxes being paid or collected, hence the kind of regulator movement in the, we get here in the 1770s here and all kinds of rebellions from the colonial legislatures. But as you know, the British are going to try to recuperate their money in here. So that's the thing is that about the result. And we're going to go through the details, there, and the methods that they're going to try to use here. So that's the second biggest thing here: recuperate the money, restrict the movement, You know, William Pitt was very good with us, but now it's time that you're going to get a little bit heavy-handed. I guess the ironic thing is, after the French and Indian War, it's not like the colonists are already thinking about independence. I think for the next really 7, maybe, you know, even 10 years, up almost maybe up until 1775 and 1776, you feel proud to be a British subject. You're the greatest country, empire in the world at this time, the most democratic and, you know, participation of all the nations in the world at this time. You've got already the English Enlightenment going on, talking about respecting individual rights. You've already got the practice of that with the, you know, the English Bill of Rights and the Glorious Revolution, jury trials, due process of law. You're really feeling proud to be a British subject. What's going to go on though? You hate, like most people, you hate being told what to do. You get it from your parents. Your parents may get it from their bosses. Your parents may be getting stuff from the local government, the states, and then the federal. People hate being told what to do. And as the further you go away, you're getting the order to do something. The more like you don't directly hear that you have a boss from Mount Olympus, hence, you know, the English Isle, that you get a little bit more PO'd at them. You get a little bit more resentful. Maybe you can understand a little bit more about your parents, but not your grandparents, not somebody that's telling you outside the family, like a teacher, like your boss, what to do. You get that kind of feeling right there. So that probably is lingering with them, and certain things are going to spark this stuff off, as we know, leading to the American Revolution. All right? All right, so you've already known this. You've had all the knowledge of like the American Revolutionary War. You don't have to know. I'm going to try to tell you what I expect you to know, and I'll be shining up here on the screen here as to annotate. So you need to know the events, causes, and actions leading up to the Revolutionary War, and we'll get to the results with these Second Significant Treaty of Paris in 1783. Again, I'll go just again. Recall events, causes, actions leading up to war. Some of you may be contemplating right now, besides turning me off, is to like, hey, you know, can I recall something? I may have that down, maybe look up something in review. Maybe you want to get the chronology somewhat right, and the responses as well. So, what you should know, number one. All right, now you know the British is probably saying we need to crack down and enforce these acts that we've put out. And this is one act that you don't need to know these acts. I'm telling you, I'm not probably going to put them up in fear that you will try to copy them now. You just need to know they need to enforce these kind of navigation acts of the Sugar Act of 1764, the Iron Act of 1750, the Hat Act of 1732, and of salutary neglect. End of salutary neglect. Let me repeat. End of salutary neglect. Now again, it's going to be a return to mercantilism, or kind of like a benevolent kind of enforcement or rigor in there, but a kind of return to colonies serving the mother country. And you know those laws or restrictions about, you got to be into the ports of, British port before you can officially trade with Great Britain, or trade with any goods. Before you can trade with the French and the Dutch, we're going to restrict your trade with only with Great Britain. Not necessarily always to London, but also to the British Empire, in the Caribbean, into Newfoundland, into Canada. That's where you're going to be exclusive trade with Britain. Enforcement of the kind of navigation laws that you've always had on the books. You're going to be fine. You're going to be collected. We're not going to have the look the other way and corruptions. That's what you need to know. the strong enforcement of all the navigation acts and of sanitary neglect. I think you know that. I just want to emphasize that. Now we get to some deal breaker. Deal breaker act and events that you should know. What I expect you to know is the traditional ones that I made fun of, but please know all these in here. Is the Stamp Act of 1765, all right? The Boston Massacre of 1770, all right? The Tea Act of 1773 and the Boston Tea Party, and the response to that with the intolerable / coercive acts by Great Britain. That's all you need to know. I didn't throw in there quartering. I didn't throw in there, currency. I didn't throw that. You don't need to know that. I'm the ones that I have on the screen. That's what you need to know. Kind of know the kind of order of that. That's what you need to know. All right, and there's some of the provisions in there for, your online test. Even if, I told you, the reason why I'm going through all this material, it may be something you don't respond to, but you'll be prepared for. It's always great to be prepared. Now, knowing that, you have to have the deal breaker responses. What are the responses? And really, I only really want to know about really 3 responses, but one general response for sure. You have a lot of non-importation agreements and boycotts going on here. After the Stamp Act, after certain events in here, after they pass, like, the Townshend Acts, which one you don't have to remember in 1767. But I'm just saying that, know the responses in here, and the big responses was kind of a general boycott and non-importation. And the 3 kind of entities to know as always that you see on tests is the Sons of Liberty on here in the Boston area, kind of leading this kind of, either tar and feathering, parading, the kind of committees of correspondence that's going to be kind of like communication in here. But no, Sons of Liberty, First and Second Continental Congresses. All right. And you don't really need to know the details about the First Continental Congress having the kind of, resolves and grievances on here, but know when they kind of actually formed. After what? First Continental Congress, after the Intolerable Acts, in response to send delegates from the colonists in there. Second Continental Congress, after the incidents in the shot heard around the world in Lexington and Concord in 1775. There you go. That's all you really need to put in together. You don't have to get into too many details. Second Continental Congress, you can remember, that's the kind of, the Olive Branch petition, George Washington, saying George Washington as the head of a Continental Army. I said automatic shut off here. So George Washington as the head of a Continental Army, Olive Branch petition, but I don't even really think, that more than anything, it's the Declaration of Independence on there. There you go. All right. First thing, and the response is there. Now, deal breaker actions. Or, again, these kind of events here. Thomas Paine, Common Sense, January 1776. Declaration of Independence, that from first grade. Natural rights, John Locke, Thomas Jefferson. What it says, life, liberty, like the pursuit of happiness, unalienable rights. That jazz. Come on, I don't need to let it break that down to you. Turning Point Battle, 1777, Saratoga. I didn't mention George Washington using his magic in Princeton and Trenton and all that, but that's the main one, Saratoga. Because, like Antietam, the Battle of Antietam in the Civil War in 1862, that kept the British from allying with the Confederacy. Well, in comparison, the Battle of Saratoga, the French said, hey, look, these hillbillies, and they call us hillbillies too. So, again, they're, snooty like that. That's probably stereotyping the French. People already think about them, about the French. That the hillbillies can fight, and it may be, conducive for us, or it would be good for us to support these against our arch traditional enemy that we fight every decade or every 15 or 20 years, the British, and formed a treaty alliance in 1778. There you go, 1781, surrender Yorktown, Boom, all right? By the way, Yorktown, Williamsburg, Jamestown, guys, once we get all through this COVID, you guys should go through that historical triangle up in Virginia, kind of visit those 3 spots. If you haven't already, I'm pretty sure you've been to Williamsburg at least. So, those are the things that you should know. Thomas Paine, Declaration of Independence, Saratoga. You get that Treaty of Alliance with France will help us win the war, because again, they're the suppliers of the weapons and the kind of help us with commanding. And the surrender at Yorktown, well, again, Washington uses kind of like, his mutant powers to get Cornwallis to surrender. There you go. There you go. See, it's easy peasy, this kind of review, because you don't have over 3 hour, test to take and right here. So, what you need to know. But, again, I'm, really, really, if I could say you would see the intensity that you see on here, is that please know these things that I'm putting up here, that I'm annotating. Know those and then keep going. Just see if you have that. So it may take you guys to kind of review and look at these things before. Last thing is the Treaty of Paris of 1783. USA, 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 USA. We get our independence. We become the United States of America. All right. So we get some fishing rights. Colonists had to repay for the property that's confiscated, destroyed to the loyalists. Okay, these are minor little things. Now here, of course, foreshadows the big thing. The British we're going to evacuate and leave the forts in the Northwest Territory. Yes, that's what's our promise to you. They're thinking who's gonna know if we kind of stay out there, linger a little bit, kind of wait around, keep trading, making some money, like that. What is America gonna do? They're impoverished, poor. We'll probably come back around 1812 and fight them again. So what are they gonna do? At this time. And by the way, I don't think they're gonna stay united. I don't even think they're gonna survive. And this is probably the British, thinking at this time, which would probably be understandably so. So, there you have it, kiddies. Probably about, another 25 or 30 minutes. I don't know how long this is going to be. But that's it for today. And make sure you do your work. And we'll go into period 3, part 2 tomorrow. I know